It's clearer to me now more than ever that Christ is the way. When you rest in not knowing what the next moment is going to bring, or the actions by which to bridge the gap, one must put their faith in Jesus Christ. But what does that mean? I've been contemplating for a very long time, my entire life most likely, but more recently in the last month or so, about what that even means and its connection to the human brain, and how to exercise ambidexterity and centeredness of being by literally driving energy from one side of your body, in my case the left, into the right side of the body and the mind, which as a result requires me to develop a level of patience, because I've realized this is the source of my hatred and anger growing up, was being right-handed, but not being able to fully actualize that hand, which is why I feel unactualized. Growing up, I would pocket my right hand as a way for people to avoid having to notice it, and for me having to deal with people asking questions about something I didn't know about. And my parents could say, "Oh, we told you everything. Your doctors told you everything." But I mean, I'm the only one who's operating it. I'm the only one who has to live with it. And I'm the one who's had surgeries done on it. And yet, even with those surgeries, and I am grateful for the level of functionality that it has, and even now, all I want is for balance to be restored. And it's no offense to the hand itself, it's an offense to the mutation. It's an offense to the forces by which that drove the mutation into being in the first place. It says to me that, you know, if so many doctors in America, which supposedly is supposed to have first world healthcare, not able to tell me after 30 fucking years of being on this goddamn planet what the hell is wrong with my hand, and then it says to me that there's something missing. And it's a good time for me to reflect upon this and to exercise the right side of my mind, because this is literally what it means to think correctly. When you put faith in Jesus Christ, you're thinking correctly, because what you're doing is you're driving energy into the corpus callosum, which is the bridge in the center of the brain. It connects the two hemispheres. An individual who has had I believe it's I forget the name of the procedure. It's not a lobotomy. It might be a lobotomy, I'm not sure, but it's when they split the fibers in the corpus callosum, either completely or like partially. And usually this is done in patients and people who regularly have seizures. And you understand what a seizure is, because I've seen violent seizures growing up. You know, the kind where a person all of a sudden collapses onto the floor and starts spasming. I sat next to a guy in the 8th grade who had this, and it was very, very disturbing. I didn't know what to think at the time, but now I sort of understand. He might have had a condition where his corpus callosum was overgrown, overstimulated perhaps, and as a result caused them to experience overcharged bursts where explosions of neural activity in his brain caused them to temporarily overload and stop functioning. He was overstimulated. Growing up, I just never really had an appreciation for my parents' approach to religion and their inability to address questions that I had. And so it was a very big driving force for me to answer these questions, such as, well, back then, did God exist? And I wouldn't even had the thought if I hadn't met a person who called himself an atheist. And I'm like, what's an atheist? An atheist is someone who doesn't believe that a God exists, or that there's a driving force in the universe, or that there's well, that's not necessarily true, but you know, it gets kind of fuzzy because a lot of atheists are scientists, and we have a very rational, logical view of the world. And I believe that this can be resolved, because usually any scientist who digs deep enough into quantum physics inevitably comes to the conclusion that there is a order to things in the world. Carl Sagan, Einstein. We've recently made the declaration that Einstein was a fraud and that he stole the theory of relativity and that it was a sham. And I don't know what to think about that. Been pondering it. I even took a look at the math, and I'm still not sure what to think entirely. I'm still working on that one. That said, though, well, there's a lot of other things to think about. I'm thinking about Matt Groening and The Simpsons and creating artwork in general, and what it means to drive energy through the right side of the brain, and what it means to think correctly, and what are the forces that drive the left and right sides of the brain, and God's relationship to Satan, and Christ's relationship to Satan, and temptation in general, and individual relationships to consumption, food, cleanliness, knowledge. So that's okay. So the theme here is hunger. Hunger is the driving force. Hunger is the third mind. Spiritual hunger, hunger to connect with God, to connect with your Creator, to know your Creator, to know the ways of creation. It occurred to me recently that I need to pray really hard for a friend. Someone who is a very spiritual person like myself, whom I never got to truly connect with on this level, though we were able to exchange enough wisdom with each other to know that we are distant brethren of the same genetic tree. There have been numerous people who have helped me learn the ways, who are no longer here, whom have been very important to my development, who have not only given me wisdom but believed in me. People I never got to meet in real life, but whom I desperately wanted to so. And now they are here no more. So, back to the hunger for knowledge. In mastery and study of Christ and Christianity, a return to the old ways has overtaken my thought process. And in the listening to very aggressive death metal and the reading of lyrics, I've awakened to an old form of thought that truly resonates with my approach to spirituality in general. For you see, they've been lying to us. The words are very subtly crafted in a way designed to manipulate and control and to keep asleep a population too weak to stand on its own feet, to continuously serve an order that does not care about them, to continuously fashion tools of war, to spin the gears of a machine designed to destroy them, when the truth is that we can free ourselves from the bonds and there's a way to do this utilizing a very direct manipulation of pathways in the mind by listening to your body and your environment and maintaining a clear awareness of the path that you need to take in order to best maximize momentary utility. That's the onus, is maximization of momentary utility. As you can see, I'm getting weaker and weaker, but this is because I'm out in the sun, I don't have any water, I've been talking for like 20 minutes, I've got a Bible and a rosary in one hand, it's kind of fucking heavy, I'm walking around, now it's starting to get kind of dry, sniffly, but as you can see, this is fasting, this is starvation. I drank a bunch of coffee before I left too. This is maximization of utility, because I'm done with this video, I'll go home and upload it to the Evil Dojo YouTube, post it on the website and the Patreon, and continue this cycle of creation and energy recovery, because well, that's the pattern. That's how you generate momentum, and you get far enough ahead, notice occurs, and eventually when notice occurs, problems get solved by a bridging of the gap in terms of energetic potential, because as a free-floating form of energy out in what the Necronomicon calls the empty space, which is ironically literally almost empty because it's so vast that it could never be filled. There is an El Dorado. There is a light. They've been lying to us. The story of Christ is the story of a superhero who was of Celtic origin, a Celtic druid, a champion. He was a very powerful warrior and magician. There's a lot to the Bible that was not added. There's a book Danzig recommends called The Lost Stories of the Bible. And there's stories of Jesus practicing magic. The reason that they don't want you to practice magic is because anyone who's deeply involved in spiritual Kabbalah, Judaism, is practicing magic. They are the ones who are involved in marketing, in banking, in many cases law. This is why there's that belief that all lawyers are liars. That's not true. There are honest lawyers out there. They are just very much hidden by the overwhelming ferocity of the beast. The beast is Israel. The beast is what drives our nation to war. The beast is a metaphor for mankind's continuous desire to dominate and conquer. Christ is the ultimate conqueror, but the lesson is too that Christ is also Satan, because out in the desert, this is kind of what I'm trying to emulate. Christ had a very interesting relationship with Satan. He was tempted. Christ was tempted by Satan. You know, he fasted for 40 days. This is a really long time. It's nothing like being up on the cross for 3 days, but 40 days in the desert's a long time. In the Necronomicon, there's a reference in the very first chapter about hunger and about wandering the desert and emulating the ways of the dead. Well, what they're trying to hide from us is that Christ is not just returning, he's already back. He's already back on earth, and those who clear away all of their previous preconceptions will be able to feel this on a deep spiritual level, and you'll know what I'm talking about. This is why there's so much mind control, why they're trying to enforce their will upon us, and why we must reject the will of the Illuminati, of the satanic monsters who control our society. And we must preach the word of the Lord, which is ironically the word of the devil, which is to say that the truth is a lie and that lies are truths. 0 equals 1, 1 equals 2. How is this possible? What am I trying to communicate to you? What sort of questions am I generating in your head? You see, there's all a pathway here that's occurring. It's about creating models of belief. It's about creating systems. It's about designing architecture for mental machinery. If you lift yourself out of a particular framework, then without another framework by which to operate, one can very quickly become lost. Alan Watts spoke of this. Alan Watts is a very powerful philosopher who was born on the same day as me. Something like 30 before I was born, who died before I ever came into being, I believe. But I watch his lectures and sermons, of which I will return to in the future and break down and talk about, and maybe I'll do one today, because I really enjoy the first sermon that I ever heard by him, which was about a dog who is wagged by its own tail. So, in my mind, my left arm is my tail. It's the end, it's the whiplash, it's what by which all of my energy is driven through because of how weak my right hand has been. And so I've been like literally going in circles, which is why Zen is such a powerful mental model. It's a model by which an individual can simply be. They do not have to ponder. They do not have to quest. They do not have to question because they are already doing exactly what they need to be doing. The Buddha had a powerful sermon that I feel is the basis of Zen, which I believe is called the Lotus Sermon. And it was a sermon where he holds up a flower in front of his congregation. And he doesn't say anything. He holds it up for a while. And most of the congregation is very confused. They have no idea what the Buddha is trying to say. However, there was one person who understood exactly what the Buddha was communicating without having to hear a single word. He understood. See, the Buddha is presenting the flower as this object of beauty, this perfect form, this existential object. It is just being, it is just existing. And so are we, which was the message. It doesn't matter what you're doing. We get so caught up in this drive to survive. Actually, the 40 days in the desert is very much connected to the Buddha's 40 days under a tree, which is connected to the Catholic, I believe it's Catholic, 40 days of Lent, which I still have to do. I've been meaning to check out churches nearby because I need to confess to my sins. For though I have not felt that I have sinned previously, I'm beginning to recognize the effects of the long-term sin. The long-term slow but subtle sin, unperceived until a moment of clarity, as we all experience in time, where we are all not perfect. Christ represents a perfect form, or a idealization by which we can all strive. We anthropomorphize this potential as a human entity, when the very reality is that these mental imagery, these stimuli, are derived from biomechanical stimulation that early humans consumed thousands of years ago, that came to Earth from interstellar origin. Terence McKenna was one of the first people to introduce the idea of the the stoned ape theory as to the origins of human consciousness as it exists today. And honestly, that seems to be the most logical way to bridge the gap between cavemen and actual tribal civilization, where you have people making tools and they're carpenters, because it's not a very huge gap between the Garden of Eden and cavemen and the rest of human history. For in Genesis, God told Adam and Eve not to eat from the tree of knowledge. They ate from the tree of life. And so it was supposed to be for eternity, until Satan tempted the beasts, Adam and Eve, and Eve did eat, and then she convinced Adam to eat. And this is the point of Alan's lecture on causality, is that in order to proceed forward into time, into space, into history, to proceed from this moment, one must consume, one must give in to the temptation, one must let go of control. Most people just are on overdrive and just consume without question, like they answer yes to every question on a forum, when they should really be rejecting everything and only consuming that which is true, that which is correct, that which is real. And that's going to be different for everyone. Everyone has different needs, biologically, spiritually, mentally. It is just a matter of time, with patience, which has not been my strong suit. I know that we will all be able to walk forward together, and that I will be able to lift you up, to raise your spirits. I only know one thing is for certain. It's that God is watching. And that we all each have our own individual conception of how spirituality and belief systems are supposed to work. And I will be illustrating mine and my thoughts in time. And unfortunately, I do have to do the very churchy thing of asking you for money. Before I leave you today, I'd like to ask you to go to my Patreon page. Go to patreon.com, patreon.com/darkmage. That's DARKMAGE. Go to patreon.com/darkmage. Or, if you prefer to give by Bitcoin, please go to my homepage at evildojo.com. That's evildojo.com, and give to my Bitcoin address, because in order for us to go forward, I'm going to require this at some point. Right now, I'm going to be seeing how far I can withhold. Now, in the meantime, I'm going to leave you be, and I'm going to pray for sauce. Y'all take it easy. Have a great weekend. One love and peace out.